We will now consider log number 5628R1 by Ms. Jacobs. For what purposes does the gentlelady seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute an amendment? The amendment without objection. The reading of the amendment is dispensed with. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady for the purpose of explaining her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is similar to the last one. It would prohibit FY26 FSRM funds for barracks and child development centers from being diverted to fund deployments to the United States in order to support civilian immigration enforcement. I know that everyone on this committee is incredibly grateful to our service members who sacrifice so much for us. They've earned a clean and a safe place to sleep and work because that's what we owe them, and because it's crucial for them to be able to do their jobs, focus on their missions, and protect our national security. But we've all seen and heard about the horror stories in barracks across the country, like the mold at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, which is just 2 hours away from Congressman Pat Harrigan's district that made barracks unlivable, or the mold in the HVAC systems, closets, and even bedding at Fort Stewart in Georgia, which is right next to Congressman Austin Scott's district. Last year, a soldier at Fort Carson in Colorado, where Congressman Jeff Crank represents, reported an air conditioning unit leaking so badly that the floor
I would ask
soggy.
the gentlelady to not refer to other members of the committee, address her comments to the chair.
Okay. I am addressing them to the chair. I'm just telling you who represents places. The same soldier from this Fort Carson in Colorado was then relocated due to black mold, only to find the new room so filthy that it required extensive cleaning. Or the 10 barracks at Fort Cavazos in Texas that had broken AC for 6 weeks earlier this year, and temperatures inside the barracks got up to the high 80s. These are huge problems. And I know all of my colleagues care about this. We've talked about it, but we don't put nearly enough money towards fixing them. And that's why we shouldn't divert any of the scant money we do have toward anything else, and especially not toward funding deployments on American soil to support civilian immigration enforcement. Deploying troops against our own communities is wasteful, dangerous, and fundamentally un-American. I've put forward a simple amendment to ensure that this doesn't happen. It would prevent any FY26 FSRM funds for quality of life infrastructure from being diverted to fund deployments to support civilian immigration enforcement in the United States. This is simply saying that the money that we allocate as Congress for barracks and child development centers and quality of life infrastructure should be used for barracks and child development centers and quality of life infrastructure, not anything else. And if my colleagues would like to send troops to the southern border or send troops to American cities, then I don't think they should, but they should find that money and actually authorize that money instead of taking it from what we all agree is a really big problem that needs to be solved. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I urge all of my colleagues to support my amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes himself. Again, this money is not being spent on immigration enforcement, and it cannot be reprogrammed for those purposes without congressional approval. The Trump administration is doing the right thing by enforcing our immigration laws. We should be supporting them, not trying to raise red flags and confuse the public about how the DOD is assisting in that effort. I urge all members to oppose the amendment. Does any other member seek recognition? The gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak in support of and thank my colleague from California for raising and introducing this amendment. Two additional points that I think are important that this amendment brings out that also bolster the points, the important points that she and my colleagues made in the previous amendments. First, and I say this with great respect to the chair, I strongly disagree that the deployment of U.S. troops against U.S. citizens is in any way right or constitutional, and I think is un-American. That is a line that is a long-standing precedent going back to the revolutionary roots of our country, and one that many, many Americans, including thousands of my constituents that have called, emailed, texted, and even brought it up in town halls, have raised that concern with me. And so I commend my colleague for introducing that point, and one that is very important. That is related to, but separate from, the diversion of funds, which is the second point that I want to raise. I know that these discussions, as I just did in the first part of my remarks, often feel hypothetical or philosophical even, but I want to bring to light in my own district what the impacts are of the shifting of FSRM funds, both towards border operations domestically and in this case, towards the deployment of U.S. troops both in California, and now we've also seen concerning similar mobilization in Florida, and I think many of us are concerned, which is the point of this amendment, that this could go further in other states domestically. The documentation of over $1 billion diverted by the Army from personnel and facilities accounts to pay for these deployments, specifically from barracks restoration projects. In my district, in addition to the items noted by my colleague, Ms. Jacobs, and I think this really speaks volumes about our priorities in a disturbing way. There are 2 soldier barracks, enlisted soldier barracks at West Point in my district. They were both severely damaged by an unprecedented storm in the summer of 2023, 2 years ago. One of them was literally a week away from having the ribbon cut on a brand new, beautiful enlisted barracks soldier, showing through our actions that we in our great United States military and in our country, we put our enlisted soldiers first who risk so much for our country. That barracks was unfortunately devastated by this storm. And now we were just briefed by the Academy leadership that that project has been slowed down, both in Building 620 and Building 624 on the grounds of West Point. Both of those projects have been slowed down now multiple years due to diversion of funds, including this diversion. And I think it's unacceptable, not only for cadet barracks, which are also affected by this, and certainly for senior officers, but specifically for our junior enlisted barracks cannot stand. So I proudly support this amendment, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman from New York yields back. The chair now recognizes a gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition of this amendment, and I have to say this. Many of my Democrat colleagues are waxing poetically about how they care so much about our junior enlisted living in barracks when several of them voted against last year's NDAA, which had the largest increase of pay for junior enlisted in the history of the country. So that's just disingenuous. And that dog will not hunt. So this amendment, again, is specifically written to try to prevent the President of the United States, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the military, and Secretary Pete Hegseth from doing their job. Again, I took an oath, as did they, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. More Americans have died from fentanyl poisoning than died in World War II. And the only way to stop this is by the actions taken by the President of the United States. During the last administration, they said they needed more authorities and new laws and all this stuff, and it turned out that that wasn't true. You just needed new leadership. You needed a commander-in-chief that actually cared about the United States of America and American citizens. We're putting the lives of American citizens first. You have a Secretary of Defense who actually cares about the members of the United States military and making sure that when they do deploy forward to the southern border to help protect the United States from criminal illegal aliens coming into the United States, that they are treated in the best way possible in some very difficult circumstances. And I know this because I spent my entire adult life either training for war, training other people for war, or at war. And if you don't think for a second that we are at war with the Chinese Communist Party that is responsible for producing this fentanyl that was being smuggled across the border, you're wrong. So I understand what Ms. Jacobs has written in this amendment, and I applaud the fact that she wants to make sure that the quality of life for our enlisted and others spending time in barracks helps them perform their duties, because we know that when you have a happy home, you can actually work better. But this is not how you do that. It just simply is not. And with that, I urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment, as I will be doing. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Keating.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up briefly on the very instructive dialogue that's occurred back and forth on this issue, The fentanyl issue is real, but this administration took 2 helicopters, vital resources, vital assets, fighting fentanyl in South America, and took them out of service against the fight in fentanyl, only to give them to the dictator of El Salvador, Bukele, because he's housing people, some of them innocent Americans there. So this points to one issue. Congress has a voice in this. This is why it's important, and this is why I support the amendment. Congress has a voice in this. Our voice should be heard, and to use the issue of fentanyl, I just couldn't help but bring back the point that the administration's doing something against that fight in fentanyl in support of their effort to house people, some of them inappropriately or illegally, in El Salvador. So, again, I'm supporting this amendment, and Congress should have a voice in this, and this amendment is a strong part of that voice. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Does any member seek recognition on Ms. Jacobs' amendment? There being no further debate, the question occurs on the amendment offered by Ms. Jacobs. So many as are in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Does recorded votes requested, recorded votes postponed.